I just want to be able to tune into my intuition and just have somebody catch my baby and otherwise leave me alone. This is something that I just saw inside of a mom group. It's something that I see quite often, and it's what I said when I was thinking about having my natural birth with my first baby. I wanted to have a completely natural home birth where I would just birth my baby and the midwife would pull the baby out of the water and onto my chest. Maybe they might have to help a little bit, or I could pull the baby out myself, but I just didn't want to be touched. And this is what happens when we ask for a natural birth, as natural as possible. We instinctively know our bodies work, right? So, here is the problem though. Most times when you're trying to get a natural birth as natural as possible, this is not what the medical system is set up for. They don't know how to support that. Inside my book, Your Empowered Birth, I really go into the details about why this doesn't work and what you need to do differently if you want to have a natural birth. But let me just give you the little cliff notes here. First of all, you need to have that thought going in that you are going to be able to birth this baby whether somebody catches or not. If you are completely stuck on the idea that your OB has to catch or your midwife has to catch, then what's going to happen is that if somebody happens to be on a power trip and they're like, well, we're not going to support you if you don't do this vaginal exam. We're not going to catch your baby if you don't agree to whatever we want you to do. Or if you don't get into the bed in a certain position, we're not going to catch your baby. What this does is they are now putting themselves in the place of power and authority, and you have two choices. One, this is what most people do. Oh, I better listen. I better just do what they tell me because otherwise I'm not going to have any help. No. This perpetuates the system. This allows them to continue to do the crap that they're doing over and over and over again. Too many people have done this. I did this. When I was trying to instinctively get into a position with my son, I knew I needed to be standing up. I knew I needed to be leaning over the bed. Technically, I needed to be in the water, but they pulled the plug, and it was dangerous for me to stay in the tub at that point because the water had drained, and it wasn't very comfortable being in that tub anyway. But when I then tried to lean over the bed, they said no. And then they forced me to get up onto the bed. And my partner, not having the idea that he really needed to advocate for me and be able to stand and protect me at that point, because I hadn't trained him. I hadn't known what I know now. And I now train my clients' partners to be that strong support, to recognize, look, you're going to have to go against the doctor. You're going to have to advocate. You're going to have to be the protector. And you don't want to be in an environment where it's going to be very hostile, because then you can get thrown out of the room. This is also why I tell my clients to hire a doula if they're going into that environment, because they need to have somebody as the guardian of their space. Otherwise, if they're going to do a home birth, they can just do it on Zoom. I can attend those on Zoom, but I can't attend a hospital birth because, first of all, I'd probably get in a lot of trouble if I did attend a hospital birth, because I would not tolerate it at all. I would probably tell off every single doctor in that room. And I don't like to see people get hurt. I don't like to see it. I get so frustrated with the injustice. That's why I got good and pissed off and became an advocate in the first place. That's why I wrote my book, Your Empowered Birth, because I got good and mad at the system. And I'm like, that's it. Everybody needs to have this roadmap that I've created that has had so much success with my clients, because it's not being taught anywhere else. So that's why I created that. And again, the link's in the bio if you want to check that out. But here's the thing you need to really know is you need to aim for physiological birth. You need to recognize that your care provider is not there to catch the baby. You can catch your own baby. Your partner can catch your baby. Your doula can catch the baby. You could just squat down and your baby could land gently onto the bed, or you could be in the water and you can just pull your baby up from the water and it'll be fine. They don't actually need to touch you. They don't need to do things to you. You don't need to have vaginal exams to know when you're progressing. You'll know when you're progressing. Because you know what? You're going to actually feel that shift in your body and you're going to do something different. As a doula, I don't do a lot of things with my clients. I'm there with them in that space. I'm there encouraging them. But sometimes I also shut up because I know that when they're having a contraction, they need people to just shut up. And a lot of people will try to talk you through it. And it's like, nope, shut up. I can't deal with that. I'm one of those people that I can't have anybody in my space. Like, even if my partner is touching me at the wrong time, it just doesn't work. So you yourself are going to be tuning into your intuition. I mean, sometimes you can look at it as like, how are you on your period? How are you before your period? How are you in your luteal phase, just those first few days before your period starts? Do you want people to be all up in your space? Or do you kind of like to get away? Because that also tunes in when you're recognizing how your body is, or if as you're pregnant, there's going to be certain days where you just want to be left alone. Lean into that. Recognize that that's your body telling you the wisdom. It's like, I need to decompress right now. If you've just had a really stressful talk with an OB, lean into that. Recognize that this is stressful. Take a breath. Nice deep breaths are always good. They're good for labor too, but they're really good for stress, and they're good for when you're raising your kids. You just take those deep breaths and let it out, and you just keep doing that, and you recognize, what are you really standing for? So what I teach my clients is this. First of all, a lot of birth plans, they tell you to have the flexibility of the plan, and if this is medically necessary, or unless this is medically necessary, I need to have this to compromise, I need to have this, or I need to ask my permission of my care provider, I need to beg my partner to let me do this, I need to beg my care provider to let me have this opportunity. I teach you how to get the birth you want without fighting, begging, or compromising. Like, that's the premise of your empowered birth, is you get the birth you want without fighting, begging, or compromising. And the reason for that is simple. If you're fighting, begging, and compromising, you're stuck in your fear. Okay? This is the ninja move here. This is the secret. You're stuck in your fear. You're not aiming for what you truly want. And then you're going to end up settling for less than you actually deserve and than what you could actually have. So with Jenny, for example, Jenny was like the epitome of the high-risk mom. She was 41 years old. She'd had previous preeclampsia with her first baby. She'd been induced before. She had a C-section. She had a very traumatic first birth at that. So that could have come up and bitten her in the butt, because trauma in birth can also, if you don't release that before you go and have another one, it can be re-triggering to you in labor. So before I had my baby daughter, I also made sure I went for birth trauma counseling when I was just in my first trimester, because I knew that those same fears might come up, and I released them. So I had Jenny do the trauma counseling before she even got pregnant again. So she had that all figured out already. But she also had gestational diabetes. She had group B strep. She had chronic high blood pressure. She had a little bit of high blood pressure at the end of her pregnancy. And there was a point where, like, if she hadn't known what's inside your empowered birth and what I teach all the time, and like, you can check my YouTube channel. I teach this stuff all the time. Keep following me on this channel as well for Instagram, because I share these videos and these insights as they come to me. And I'm really giving you as much information as I possibly can, because information, I believe, should be free. It's the coaching and the support and the actual customization that I actually charge for with my clients. Other than that, like, anything that I teach, it's out there, okay? And if you ever have any questions or you want me to teach on something, drop a comment, ask a question, and I'll get to it if I haven't already had something before, or I'll reteach it. And I have more insights that I come up with every single week, because I'm also in other communities and I'm drawing from all these different perspectives. A friend of mine once told me that wisdom comes from multiple perspectives. And I've always truly believed that as well. So this is why I do this, like the way I do it. Okay, so you want to have a natural birth as natural as possible and you don't want anybody to touch you? Here's what you really need, okay? You need to understand that your body's going to do this anyway. You need to get past all of your fears. You need to know that when a fear comes up, how to release it quickly so that it doesn't internalize into your body and it doesn't stall your birth. And it doesn't make you think that something's wrong when it actually isn't. And it doesn't give the medical system the ability to pathologize what's going on in your birth, because they will. They absolutely will. If I had not been home with my daughter, having all that prodromal labor and that stop and start labor and that labor stall for 16 hours, if I'd been in the hospital, you know what would have happened. They would have wanted to break my water. My waters didn't release until she was crowning. They would have wanted to run Pitocin. My best friend Jenny says you can take Pitocin and shove it in your own vein. Like, that's how much she hates Pitocin. There's no freaking way that I would get Pitocin in my birth. Plus, I hate needles. They probably would have said, baby's not coming out and it's a C-section. I mean, they were almost going to do that with my son because I wasn't pushing fast enough and I wasn't getting him out fast enough. But again, this is pathologizing something that doesn't need to be pathologized. So the question I asked my midwife just before I knew I was sending her home was this: how is my daughter's heart rate? And she said, it's fine. She's doing very well. And I said, okay, I'm going to bed. I'll call you if contractions pick up again. And then I didn't call her until that baby was on her way out. And I was totally fine with it. I was like, you know what? If this baby comes out before the midwife gets here, awesome. This is another thing I teach my clients. Is like, if you want to have a natural birth as natural as possible, don't go to the hospital until the last possible minute. Sure, you might end up giving birth at home. You might end up giving birth in the car. You might end up giving birth in the hospital lobby. You might end up giving birth as soon as you get into your room. You might give birth before the doctor gets there. You don't need them. You don't need them. If you start to feel that something's wrong, somebody will help you. Okay? Somebody will help you. That's your body saying, I need to get somewhere safe. You're going to have that intuition. But if nothing's wrong, you don't focus on that. You focus on the fact that, okay, midwife's on her way. I might end up giving birth to this baby myself. My partner is freaking out right now. He's on the phone with my doula. And he's like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to handle this. I don't know. And you're sitting in the birth pool. And you're like, babe, please, I got this. I got this. I know what I need to do. My body's already doing it. Baby's coming out. I'm in the water. What's the worst that's going to happen? She's going to come out. I'm going to pick her up out of the water. She's going to come up onto my chest. She will not take a breath until she reaches the surface. So this is why you also need to have the pool really deep, because you don't want your baby to accidentally take a breath. This is also why I said it was super dangerous that the hospital ended up, the staff ends up pulling the plug on this pool, or the tub on me, when I was pushing my son out. If I had actually been pushing, if he'd actually been coming out at that moment, and they pulled that plug, that could have been a serious, serious issue. And, you know, that kind of ticked me off. And I shared that in another video not too long ago when I was reading that blog post about the controversial midwife blog post that I had created on my site that ended up getting pulled, and I had to create a new one. But the thing is that you need to recognize, first of all, your baby's going to come out. Nobody actually needs to catch. You've got this. It's either going to be you or your partner or your doula is going to catch, or you know what? Maybe the nurse has to catch. They get in trouble. They get scared, but they're going to have to do it. Because if they don't, they're going to get in even more trouble. And maybe it's not the OB that you planned on having to catch your baby. Maybe it's somebody completely different. But all they're doing is catching the baby. And they're only doing as much as you ask them to do. And then they go on their way. And then you get to do what you wanted to do in the first place, which is have your physiological birth. They can't touch you if you know your rights and recognize that, hey, you're only coming in to do this one thing. This is all I want you to do. It's just this one thing. Just make sure my baby doesn't hit the floor. But, I'm pushing. I don't need you to pull this baby. I just want, just that little bit of help. And that's what my best friend Jenny did, is she was like, baby's coming. I'm standing. I'm not able to get into the position I'd wanted to get into. I can't catch the baby myself. I need the help of my partner and my doula to just make sure this baby doesn't hit the floor. And the nurse is standing back, and she was just waiting, because she's like, maybe I should call the doctor now, because she seems to be pushing. And they'd been telling her for about half an hour, you should probably call the doctor, baby's coming. And she just didn't believe it, because she had her checklist. She wanted to go through her checklist, and she had those vaginal exams that she needed to do to assess whether the baby was coming. You don't need any of that. So make sure you have a care provider who understands their role is to sit on their hands until you need them. Make sure that you're in an environment in the hospital. If you're choosing hospital, make sure that hospital is not going to cause a lot of unnecessary stress. If they understand that you're coming in and you're just there in case you need something, but they are to leave you alone and they have respected that, that's okay. If, however, they happen to be the hospital that has their agenda and they want to just get you through the conveyor belt, you do not want to go to that one unless it's the very last resort. And if it's the very last resort, then aim for a car birth. Seriously. Or just stay home and consider having them come to you. Because if you can't do home birth, if there's no midwives in your area, if it's just not accessible, sometimes we've just got to find other creative ways of doing this. And I lay that out inside my book too. I also have some bonuses that I added to the actual book. So there's a URL, a little link if you get the ebook. If money is an issue for you, reach out to me, because I do help those who really do have the money issues. I've been there. I know what it's like. My house burned down almost 3.5 years ago. And now it's I understand. So if money is an issue, all you have to do is reach out to me. And if money's not an issue and you want to just support me, you can support me. The best way is to go and get that book and to tell others where to get the book and to just keep this message going. Because what I'm seeing is that moms who want to just not be touched end up falling into the same natural birth traps over and over again. And their partners aren't aware of their role. So the second part, after your care provider and your doula, who you're also hiring to hold that space for you, is making sure that your partner is aware of their role in your birth, which is not to freak you out. It's not just a glorified back massager. It's someone who is your protector, who is going to hold space for you. And this is especially true if you've got the male partner, because that is their divine role as the man. They have that skill set. That's what they're here for, is to protect you. So they get to play the hero. So you want them to be your biggest hero. You do not want them to be the idiot that goes and picks you up off of the floor and puts you on the bed because the midwife and the nurse said, we're having a hard time getting her up onto the bed. I mean, I'm sorry I called my ex-partner an idiot for a second there. I mean, we are friends now, and we have a working co-parenting relationship. But, I mean, come on, that was a really idiot move that he did. And he knows it was an idiot move. And he made up for it with our second birth when he had just said, can we just do it ourselves? And I was like, yes, actually, we can. In fact, I was planning on doing that if I couldn't get the support, because there was just no way I was going back to the hospital. I would sooner birth under a tree. And so, yeah, that's what I want to share with you. I've got to get ready for my mastermind now. Thank you so much for watching. Remember, if you find value in these videos, make sure you're liking them. Make sure you save them, share them. If you are a birth worker yourself and you want a soapbox off of bits and pieces, I mean, I give you total permission to go and take bits and pieces of what I'm saying and splice it with your own content and put it out there and soapbox away, because it's going to take all of us. And, you know, I want to amplify your voice too. And mama, if you are looking to have this beautiful natural birth as natural as possible, I'm just going to remind you again, you've got to play the game much different from what is out there in mainstream. You've got to follow accounts such as Your Badass Natural Birth. They have the roadmap too. Following Midwife Thinking, Rachel Reed, Reclaiming Childbirth as a Rite of Passage. She's a good one. If you're in the UK as well, there's the Positive Birth Movement. That one was a good one. I'm not sure if they're still active or not, but they have the Positive Birth book. There's Give Birth Like a Feminist. Ina May's Guide to Childbirth is still an excellent book. There's so many unassisted childbirth books out there that if you're following unassisted childbirth educators, what that teaches you is the physiological birth model that you really need. So you really want to aim for that kind of education of recognizing the unassisted model, even if you're not planning to go unassisted, because that shows you what you can actually do. And it gives you that confidence. Birth Monopoly is always a good one for your rights. I mean, Kristen Pascucci, like, she was one of my first gurus, basically. I followed everything with her. Rebecca Decker, VBACFacts.com is another one. So Rebecca Decker is evidence-based birth, VBACFacts.com. There's Improving Birth, and now Birthify. Like, all of these people, there's Barbara Harper, who is like the goddess of water birth. And, I mean, we're also working on a coalition for water birth for Canada, which is freaking about time. And I just wanted to, like, tell you, like, the last thing you want to do is follow accounts from obstetricians. The last thing you want to do is follow accounts from nurses that perpetuate the medical model of birth. They're not your people. You want a birth as natural as possible, where the OB just catches or doesn't catch at all and they just leave you alone and you just show up and birth your baby. Do not follow the advice of anybody who is ingrained in the medical system. They haven't seen it. They rarely see it. If it happens, it's a fluke. And it's seen as an emergency. It's seen as, oh no, we screwed up because this baby came out and nobody was there to catch. And I'm sitting over here and I'm looking at that and I'm like, sweet. That mama did not get a single intervention. You just keep sitting on your hands. Oh, but you don't know how to sit on your hands because you've been also indoctrinated into the fear. So the thing is that your care provider is freaking terrified of unassisted birth. Freaking terrified. Because they've been taught to be freaking terrified. You've been taught to be freaking terrified. But you know what? Natural birth actually isn't that hard. It's like with how people say business is simple, we make it complicated. Well, birth is simple, we make it complicated. All right. I gotta go and jump on my mastermind before my people show up on me. I love you, and I'll talk to you soon.